What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 235 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Solozo. Today, we're talking about accelerating your Amazon business, something we all want to do for sure. And we've got a great guest with us, someone who's definitely accelerated his Amazon business and multiple other businesses and helps others do the same thing. So joining us today is Shaahin Cheyene. How are you, Shaahin?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Great pronunciation of my name. You nailed it the first time. So we're already off to an amazing start. Super psyched to talk with you guys. It's going to be fun.
This will be fun. This is the first time we've met you, but we've looked through. I mean, you've got an amazing website, by the way, and an amazing story. We were looking through all of you. You got a lot of content that you put out. So we've done a little research on you, and it's fascinating. I can't wait to dive in to your story. I think it'll be really valuable for everyone listening. And then we can talk about all the other things that you're doing, helping other people sell. You're helping you podcast Cola. You help book podcast guests. We're going to be talking about that as well. But I think I want to give you the floor for a little bit here. And just how did you get into e-commerce? What were you doing before that? And then just tell us your story.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So it's an interesting story. I've been doing this since the early 90s. Immigrated from Iran back in the 1980s during the Iran-Contra. Came to the States, didn't speak a word of English. Family wanted me to become a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. Didn't want to hang with that. So I left home at a very young age, left school at like 15. And I took a deep dive into the electronic music scene, the EDM rave scene that was going on at the time. I invented this insane drug supplement thing back in the 90s called Herbal Ecstacy. And by the time I was in my teens, late teens, we had broken $1 billion in revenue pre-internet. It was one of the biggest supplements of that time, certainly one of the biggest supplements of all time if you look at it by dollar standards those days to these days. And from there, I went on to inventing most of the technology for vape. So when you see vapes or vaporizers, most of that technology came from technology that I patented and created. That company went public. I exited just prior in 2006. And from there, guys, I started, I got married, I had a kid, and I started thinking to myself, man, I got to improve my mental acuity. So I decided to develop a brain pill along with one of the big pharma companies. And I was like, man, this stuff's great, but how am I going to sell this stuff? And right about that time, this little nerdy bald guy, you guys may have heard of him, Jeff Bezos, started this little platform called Amazon. And he was accessible in those days. Now we're talking 2008, 2009. You could get a hold of Jeff if you needed to. And the word had spread to a few of us that you could go jeff@amazon.com and he would respond, which was, now everybody knows it, but back then it was like a little known thing. And we got a hold of his number and we kind of started talking to his people and very occasionally to him and his assistants and his team. And we learned that they were opening up the platform, the Amazon platform, to third-party sellers, which meant whereas before you could only sell books and DVDs and stuff like that, you could start selling anything. And I was like, you know what, guys, let me try the supplement. Now, here's a crazy thing for you guys who are sellers. Now Amazon makes you jump through hoops and loops, and they set something on fire, and you got to jump backwards and forwards and not burn your tail to get an account. I started my first Amazon seller account and listed my first product in under 15 minutes when the platform first opened up to third-party sellers. It was nuts. And I was like, cool, I'm going to the product was called Excelerol Focus Plus. It's still for sale on Amazon to this day. But it was $120 back then. It's a lot cheaper now. And it really worked freaking good. And so I was like, but $120 is a lot. Let me just put it up. Let's see what happens. Because I was thinking direct response, because I had experience in direct response. I had experience in supplements. So I put it up, went to sleep, woke up the next day, guys, to thousands of orders. This is back in the day where you didn't have to do much. Amazon was doing all the CA, the customer acquisition for you. They were going out there. They were like, woo, look, someone's put a product up. Let's promote it, right? They're all happy. And they're spending millions of dollars promoting your stuff. They don't care. They just wanted the customer acquisition. So they'll spend $1 million to make 500,000. It didn't matter. Bezos wanted to get to that critical mass. So as that happened, I listed this product on. There weren't very many supplements on there, and woke up the next day to thousands of orders, like insane. Imagine if you were the only person on Amazon with a single product right now. It'd just be nuts. So it was like that, and I was like, let me just double check. And I did the math, and I was like, dude, I just made hundreds of thousands of dollars overnight. Now, I'm no stranger to that. And by the way, you guys, if you want to check out my book on how I did it the first time, it's called Billions, How I Became King of the Thrill Pill Cult. Billion, singular, excuse me. How I Became King of the Thrill Pill Cult. That just got optioned by a studio for a major motion picture. So we're really excited about that. But the book's on Audible and Amazon if you guys want to check it out. I think I make a whole 42 cents if someone buys it. So trust me, I'm not doing that for the money. But so I realized there was more meat on the bones on this Amazon thing than anything else I was doing at the time. So I said, hey, all eggs in the Amazon basket. And I did deep dives. I started talking to people. I realized that there were people in Ukraine and Russia, Eastern Europe, that had become very proficient at hacking the Amazon algorithm. And so I started learning, how do you master this algorithm? And they were on their first iteration of their algorithm. And it was easy. If you remember back in those days, people were running bots. Like you could get 10,000 reviews in a weekend for like 20 cents. Like, they would run these buy bots where people you would set the bot, and we never did any of this kind of stuff. I just want to make that clear. I heard about this from other people. Just like a friend did it. It's for a friend. And they had servers set up, like hundreds of laptops, and they would just keep hitting, order. And Amazon hadn't figured out that when you buy a product, that it takes, maybe an hour or two, maybe longer, sometimes 24 hours for them to process the payment. So in that interim, people could leave a review, buy the product, leave a review. And when Amazon found out, the payment's bad, they would communicate to the buyer and say, hey, sorry, your payment was declined, but the reviews still went through. So there were people who got tens of thousands. This is before the first, we call it the Great Purge that Amazon did, where they cleared it out. They got rid of all these bad actors and kind of made it more of a level playing field. But we became experts at Amazon at all the stuff, the white hat, the gray hat, the black hat. We learned how to do it. And people started asking me to do it for them. So we started Accelerated Intelligence, which is our service company, where we started doing it for Fortune 50s, Fortune 500. Some of the biggest brands became our clients because they started looking at this and went, holy shit, like we're really good at disruption marketing. We have no idea how to approach this Amazon thing. Like this is the great equalizer. Like Chris and Dustin with 50 cents and a Coke can come out and compete with our, big brand, real world product, and they could actually beat us. So companies started hiring us to do that for them. And then people came to me and were like, hey, Shaahin, can you do this for us? I was like, yeah, but we're fucking expensive. We bill out a $55K a month. I bill out nearly $2,000 an hour at that stage. And so somebody brought up to me, they said, hey, why don't you do a course and it can be a DIY? And I thought, oh, well, that's awesome. And that's how I came up with FBA Seller Course. So anyone that's interested is FBAsellercourse.com. Or if you guys want to learn, I've got a 1-hour course. It's normally $200. Use the code SELOZO and I'll give it to you for free. Just reach out to me. My email is darkzess@gmail.com, DARKZESS. Make sure you put Selozo in the subject heading, and I'll give you the $200 course for free. And now I've got a bunch of 7-figure companies. We've got 2 8-figure companies that we've grown. We make most of our money selling on Amazon, but my focus is inspiring and accelerating other people's growth to do what we've all done and what we know the Amazon platform's capable of.
There is a ton to unpack there. And I told everybody when we started that this story is impressive. It's amazing. I got to go back to the beginning of your story, though. How, as a teenager, did you create that supplement and market it and grow it to that scale? Like, I mean, was that your idea? Were you like, okay, I'm going to become the best selling supplement, or did it just organically happen, or what?
Great question. So dude, I was sleeping in abandoned buildings and on the beach. I would eat at the community college. I had left home. I had no money, no friends. I had nothing, and no clue. All I had was my books. I would read like Think and Grow Rich and this other book, The Trick to Money is Having Some, by a friend of mine who later became a friend, Stuart Wilde, and just aspirational with no resources. So I got involved in the rave scene because they would let me go in and crash behind the speakers. You know, I could sneak into these raves. They would go on late, so I'd just go crash behind the speakers. And I realized that what was happening at these raves was that the promoters weren't making any money. The musicians weren't making any money because they were all electronic DJs. Nobody saw any value in that back in those days. But the people who were making the money were the drug dealers. And the supply of the biggest party drug ever, ecstasy, had completely dried up. It would come from England and from Holland, and it was Just Say No and all those kinds of things. So they had managed to successfully really curtail the flow of that particular product. I thought to myself, man, if I could come up with an alternative that was legal, that was natural, I could make a fortune. And I did it. I basically managed to get myself a girlfriend. Even though I was broke, I managed to convince her to let me cook up prototypes in her kitchen. And when I had a prototype that worked, I went to the clubs and the drug dealers were bone dry. They had nothing to sell, nothing that the people at the raves wanted, at least. And I managed to convince them to sell my pills instead of the illicit drugs. And remember, guys, this was pre-internet, pre-social media, pre-mobile phones. And we created $1 billion in revenue, well documented in multiple avenues. We've had 2 Newsweek covers, London Observer. I know now, you know, with this kind of like Instagram, TikTok culture, everyone's like, look at my Lambo. You're like, dude, that fucking thing's rented. Look at me on this yacht with a jacuzzi. You're like, that's a TV set, dude. You're just fucking trying to sell me shit. Stop. But this was back in those days. I was a fucking teenager, and we actually made $1 billion of money, of revenue. And, you know, it was a lot harder to do back then. It was a lot harder to get the message out, but we did it through unconventional ways. We hacked the algorithm before there was an algorithm. And that's how it happened. And generally the beat would be this. We would do something controversial. The press would cover it in a bad way. And all in the meanwhile, everybody wants to talk to the bad guy because it's no fun just talking to the government or talking to, you know, the people trying to shut it down. Here I was, long-haired kid. Where'd my hair go? So long hair, you guys can see me on the cover of my book. Check it out, guys. Billion, How I Became King of the Thrill Pill Cult. But I was this long-haired kid. They loved having me on. MTV was huge. I'd be on MTV all the time. They'd have me on against these other guys. Now, what would the head of the FDA say? What would the head of the FTC, all these governmental agencies, these official guys in these stuffy suits, they would say, this stuff is dangerous. And what would people hear on the other end? They would hear, this shit must actually work.
Right.
People who consume drugs aren't that worried about the later side effects. What they're concerned about is, will this shit work? And so the more publicity we got, the more they said, danger, danger, the more money we made. And I remembered, I tell the story often. So I got invited, I flown out to Montel Williams, who was a big talk show host in the 1990s. Okay, you know. Mm-hmm. So in the 1990s, Montel Williams was huge. It was like Oprah, Donahue, and Montel Williams were the 3 big ones. And Montel invited me over to his show, and I got the news that it was going to be a bloodbath for me, that what they were going to do was to just slam me. He even wanted to try to get me arrested, but there was nothing to arrest me for. Everything we did was legal. He wanted to try to get me arrested on air. So I heard this. My publicists are calling me, don't go, don't go. My attorneys are like, don't go. I'm like, hell yeah, we're going. So I loaded up a bunch of suitcases with our pills. I had t-shirts printed overnight with our 800 number. Remember, pre-internet, our 800 number over the top. And we brought free pills and t-shirts, and we went out to the audience ahead of time that was waiting in the line in New York City.
Oh
and we said, hey, you want to get free pills? You want to get free t-shirts? You want to get, tickets to shows, whatever? We'll give it to you. But here's the one thing we ask you to do. When you go on the show, we want you to take your sweaters off after this, when Shaahin goes on, and the 800 number will be on there. So you guys can watch this on YouTube. It's on there. And they didn't catch it until months and months later on reruns. And so when I went on the show, I had the shirt, and all these guys are saying, danger, danger, don't take this stuff. And I'm like, let me ask a question. Has anybody ever been hurt from our product? No, but they will be. And it's danger, danger. And the phone lines are ringing. People are calling the 800 number on my shirt over and over again. We made $1 million, maybe more, from the first airing of that show, just from people calling. I had 200 people in Venice Beach answering phones, taking orders. And if you lived or worked in Venice Beach at that time and could fog up a mirror, I would hire you to answer phones. We could not ship the stuff quickly enough. We were making it for 25 cents, selling it for $20, direct to consumer. It cost us at that time, I think, $1 to pick, pack, and ship it. And it was incredibly lucrative. That's how we got to $1 billion.
That is an incredible story. I just like the guerrilla marketing of that. I love stuff like that. Like, nothing was going to stop you. You were going to sell that. You were going to get it. I mean, and you did it. And yeah. I like the reverse psychology too, of like, they always say, no press is really bad press. I mean, it's awareness. Right. And you use that to, I mean, I can think of it from the other side. I'm thinking of it as like, if I was a raver and I'm using ecstasy, and I'm even if you are a little concerned about the danger of it, now you're presented with an alternative and you're like, maybe I should go that way. I mean, maybe I should try that, see if it's safer, better. Is that still for sale?
Yeah, we do have it. I mean, we have it on Amazon. I mean, certainly it's not what it used to be. They banned the main ingredient, which was ephedra. And we have it going. I own the trademark. I own the assets. And my goal now is to wait for the film release and then to relaunch it. We've got a really killer formula that I think is going to be amazing. And, I'm hoping to partner with a Fortune 50, Fortune 500 company to relaunch that. But it is currently for sale. And, you can get it online on Amazon and whatnot. But it is a pale shadow of what it used to be. But to your point about publicity and no publicity being bad publicity, which is why now I've got this company, Podcast Cola, which is fascinating. And you guys know this, and I think it's, your Solozo, and what you guys are doing is, in business, in order to win, you have to have an unfair advantage. There's no way around that. You have to have an unfair advantage. And one of the greatest advantages, what you guys are doing right now, is podcasts. Why? Because back then we had to do all this stuff to get publicity. Now, if you have a product or a service, thanks to guys like Joe Rogan and Pat Bet David, and a lot of these guys who really stuck with the podcasting format, now you can get out there and get your product, your service, whatever it is. If you're an Amazon seller, you should be doing podcasts today, because it takes about 6 months to build up. But, getting on these shows, you get to know the person that you're talking to. But more importantly, you get to sell through story. So like, we're one of the biggest sellers in the world of a particular tea, green tea called matcha tea. And if you look on Amazon, I know you guys are Amazon sellers, check out the stats. We sell millions and millions of dollars of matcha tea. And we do private label for other sellers of matcha tea. Our brand is Matcha DNA. But there's a ton of brands, and a lot of them have been sold to aggregators now. I'm sure you guys have talked on your show about the whole aggregator phase and what's going on. And Matcha DNA is one of the hottest legacy products, been around since the beginning days of Amazon. And just being on podcasts, talking about it, have increased sales of that product dramatically. I would say over 20%. And it lives for fucking ever. podcasts live forever. If you run a Facebook ad, an Instagram ad, you guys know about that. It's super expensive. And I don't know anybody right now on Amazon that's making money running Insta ads, TikTok ads direct to product. It just doesn't sell. You can do it to list build, but you can't do it to sell product. But what you can do is podcasts, and they're very cheap. So I won't go on too much about that, but anybody who's got a product or service, and if you're interested in being on podcasts, you got to have a story. Right? There's got to be something behind your product. If you're selling small automotive screws, that's not a good product to have on podcast. But if you're selling, we had a guy on the other day who sells the best friggin' men's underwear on the planet on Amazon. And it's like $40, but it makes your junk feel like it's floating on a cloud. Like it is the greatest, best. It's ventilated. It's good for all your stuff. That's a cool fucking story. He was a war veteran, and he just discovered that the guys needed, a different kind of thing than what's being sold out there. And he's making a ton of money selling it on Amazon. I'll give him a plug later, but ideal for podcasts because he can get on all these dude podcasts and tell that story. He can get on athlete podcasts. He can get on, all kinds of patriotic podcasts and tell that story. And when he tells the story, you're not shoving your product down people's throats. What you're doing is you're just telling a story, and people will buy the product because they like you, not because you're disrupting their shit and being like, hey, have this, have that.
That's important. That story is important. It helps you sell the product, makes you be passionate about it. I was talking to a seller the other day. He's like, oh, I just want to sell stuff. I'm like, get passionate about something. Like get something that you want to sell. That way you stay with it, and that way you want to move forward with it. Don't just sell widgets. Find something you like. Get something that you want to do, and really get behind it. Come up with the story. Have a story about a product. Why you doing it? I think it's really important now to have that story, especially selling on Amazon, because now consumers can relate to it and they like it, and they can see it. You see it on Shopify sites. People say about like your About Us page, or why we started this, what our mission is, all kinds of stuff like that. So I think a story is something that can probably set you apart from your competitor as well.
I like the podcast angle. That's Chris and I, that's why we started this podcast, was to get our story out. It's had a fascinating, just what happens when you do that. I mean, we talk to prospective clients of Solozo all the time. They're like, hey, I know you. I've seen you. I've seen your videos. And it's kind of bizarre. It's like, oh, everyone, you're out there. Everyone knows you. I'm like, I'm glad I'm getting to know you now. That we're talking, but it does help. And you brought it up because we're a service provider. We're trying to, that's what we're trying to get people to understand us. They want to work with us, hopefully, if they like us. But for a product, it would be the same thing. And I don't know if that's a strategy that a lot of sellers are doing. They're probably making content for social, like you're talking about. They're trying to do all that. But I mean, even knowing the founder's story, that's always, and it just builds a tribe around it. I mean, you could think of a lot of brands out there that are like that. I mean, there's big ones. Elon Musk. I mean, he's a founder story. That's amazing to listen to. It's really interesting from that angle. Yeah, everyone should do that. You're right. Everyone should, if that has an Amazon store, e-commerce, start doing podcasts. Go out, reach out to Podcast Cola. They can help book you. It'd be great. Let's go now. So that I just can't get over that story. That's amazing. But then you moved on. Now you're helping others accelerate their growth on Amazon or start selling. You've developed a course. You're an agency of sorts, I guess, helping people manage their Amazon business. So you're doing a lot right now. Does this space, do you still get as excited about this space as you did when you got your multi-$1,000 order overnight years ago?
Yeah, Amazon is like a marriage, right? When you first start dating, you're like super excited and everything's fucking great and wow, this is great. And then then you have a couple sleepovers and you're like, oh, this is a normal person with morning breath, and this person farts and all this normal stuff, right? And then you come to the phase where you're like, wow, I really get to know this person, and this is awesome. And then you come to the phase where like you have kids and you got to just get to the point where you are managing it, but things come up like any business. All right. So I think I'll end that analogy there. But my point is this, that Amazon is a very effective tool and marketplace. It should not be your only one. You should be diversified, just like your portfolio, your business, your life should be diversified. Your business with your physical products should be diversified across multiple platforms. Okay. It doesn't mean, that if something happens to Amazon that, your business will die, because, most of us are selling the majority of our products, 90+% on the Amazon platform. But it just means that you're creating some added avenues of revenue to fortify your business. I get psyched about Amazon. What I don't get psyched about is people who, and I get this all the time, people who come to me and say, dude, I have the best product idea, man. I got this mousetrap. It is the best. It's better than all the other ones. And to that, I tell them, come back to me when you have a better story. Because one of the things that Amazon has done, and people won't tell you this, and some people give me some slack about kind of telling it as it is, because they don't want to ruin the pool for new people that are coming in. But the fact is, Amazon in a lot of ways has really killed innovation. How have they done that? They've done that by commoditizing everything and bringing in the lowest common denominator. So if you have a product that you're selling on Amazon that's really great and you have a great story behind it, and the product is better than every other product, you could lose. You could go out of business because there's somebody that sells a cheaper product with a slightly better story than yours. So how you become a master at Amazon isn't by creating a better product. And sadly, that's the culture that Amazon has created. So when people come to me and they're like, oh, I got this amazing idea, product, whatever. And I say, that's really good, dude. With that and 50 cents, you can get a Coke. So what I like is people who go, hey, I would like to get into this category of automotive or pet. I've done the research and I know that's a great category. Now I'm going to go and find the niche within the niche of disabled one-legged pets from Bujumbura. And there's a great market for that. I'm going to go deeper and deeper into that niche until I find something where there is low competition and high profit. And I'm going to find the balance, and then I'm going to go in and crush it in that field. And then I'm going to go in and build verticals. And I'm going to build verticals across my category. And we're going to become the best disabled pet category in the world, right? We're going to make and we're going to sell the market what it wants. That's how you, and very few people will tell you this, guys. That's how you make money on Amazon. You don't make money on Amazon selling. I had a guy who had this coffee machine that I swear to God was like blessed by the Dalai Lama, and it sang in 4 different languages and it made your coffee sing, but it was like $400. And I was like, dude, this thing is awesome. I'll buy 2. Nobody else is going to buy this shit because everything else you can buy an Nespresso knockoff or one of those machines for $89, and it does everything that I need. And they've got they tell all the story. They've got all the reviews. It's got everything that I need. So your product is good going direct to consumer. So if you can do a retail play, we teach our students on FBAsellercourse.com. We teach them how to get into retail. Our products are sold in TJ Maxx, Kroger's, CVS, GNC, all those stores. Our products are sold in. So 99 cent only, dollar stores, great stores to sell products in. Most people don't think about that. But the idea is this. You want to find the distribution, you want to find the niche and feed it what it wants, rather than come to market with a product and be like, okay, now how am I going to sell this? Where am I going to sell it? That's a very expensive way to do it. Just like you guys have done with Solozo. You guys know that there's a niche, there's a market for Amazon sellers for this very specific software. I mean, the most important thing right now is going to be how do you optimize your ad spend, your PPC, which is what I assume you guys do very well. from what I've told. I've never used it, but I'm going to. And based on that, you guys have given the market what it already needs. You didn't come up with some like wacky shit and then go out there and try to shove it down people's throats or convince people that they want it. You're giving people what they already need, which is why you're going to be hugely successful and why, you know, we're going to see the IPO in what, 2 years?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah,
Right.
it's a great point you bring up, because I was just having a conversation with a seller who invented a product. I won't go into all the details of it, what it was, but it was an invention, and he was talking about how he was struggling on Amazon. I'm like, it's because the search there, no one even knows to search for that. It's new. You have to have a completely different strategy for this product. This needs to be, you need social media campaigns explaining why people need this product. You need all this other stuff, but the Amazon platform is not ready for your product because nobody's searching for it. And I think that's a very, very valid point that you make, because I think that, you know, you just need to be the best presented widget of that, whatever that widget is. And if you can do that with a story, obviously, you know, reviews, everything else, that helps. But it's an interesting marketplace. It's price point, it's reviews, and it's what you just got to get people what they want right now. That's what they're looking for. Yeah,
it's kind of like first dates. You know, it's more important to look good than to actually be good. You know, but Amazon's like that all the time. So, you know, I'll tell you a funny thing based on what you guys are saying. So I invented the vaporizer. Most people don't know this. I wrote a book on it, got all the patents on it, worked with big pharma to develop all that technology, which is what arose now, which you see all these vapes, there's multi-billion-dollar business. So back in those days, I was thinking about, man, people have been smoking we're talking about inventions. People have been smoking since the dawn of time, right? There was some caveman hit someone over the head with a bone and went and started smoking, burnt something, was like, oh, this shit's great. So there we were in 2000, maybe late 1990s. And I'm thinking, all right, is there an alternative to this? Has anybody come up with an alternative? I was like, get the fuck out of here. No one's come up with an alternative. And so I started researching and I'm like, all right, so if you heat the plant matter up, whatever it is, cannabis, tobacco, we sold it as for tobacco because cannabis wasn't legalized at that time. You heat it up to the point where it releases the nicotine, the THC, the cannabinoids, but not to the point where it burns it. You get all the medicine and none of the downside. It's like, this is amazing. No one's done this. It's crazy. So, all right, let's do it. So I went to China. I hired some really smart engineers here, and we put together how it was going to actually be made in the factory. And I went to China. I found a factory to make it, and this was pre-Amazon. And I realized it was going to cost me about $30 a unit to make, but there was no competition. I sold it for $499 for the first ones. It cost me $39. We were selling direct to consumer. There was no Amazon. I had a website and we had an 800 number and we advertised in the back of some magazines. And that was it. And it was glorious all day long. Okay, so innovation works there. What did I spend money on? We spent money on educating the consumers that they need this thing. And believe me, most of the people who were buying it were pot smokers. And pot smokers are the hardest fucking people to convince because the barrier to entry for them, like the barrier for them to buy your product is massive because all they have to do is light up a joint and they're done. And it delivers all the stuff they want to, and they don't have to think about the negatives of it until 20 years later. So trying to convince them is very difficult. So that's where we spent our money, just educating consumers on why vaporization was a harm reduction measure to smoking. And, you know, and that was a great business, but I am sure if Amazon was around, it would have crushed it because in minutes we would have had thousands of competitors and then we would just be another product. And then we would have to compete against everybody else and tell a better story. We wouldn't be able to make the product the way we wanted to because now we're raced to bottom. So again, anyone that's interested, check out fbasellercourse.com. Reach out to me. We've got a great community of over 200 sellers at all different levels doing this kind of stuff. And every single day of the week on our group calls, on our weekly calls, on our mentoring and coaching calls, I've got my little ruler and I'm smacking people's hands when they're telling me they want to invent shit, because it's a bad fucking idea almost all the time.
Well, it goes back to the story. You were just talking about how you had to educate the consumer, having a good story, telling them what that is. And that's kind of how you get them to understand the product more. Is that the most common thing that you see between like how to accelerate the growth, is just the lack of a really good story of the brand and what they're trying to do?
Yeah. I mean, look, there's that. Then the biggest problem that sellers have, and we teach you ways to get around this. If you guys reach out to me again, my email, darkzess@gmail.com, darkzess@gmail.com. Use Celozo as the code. But the biggest problem that people have is they think it's like a baseball game. I see you got some baseballs back there, right? So they're up there on the plate and they're like, all right, man, I'm going to hit a home run. And occasionally they'll get lucky. They'll get an easy throw, or, they'll hit it correctly and the ball will go out of the court and great, you got a home run. But that's not the usual, right? The usual is you might get a first base. Then you might get a second base. Then you might get struck out a couple times, right? And the sellers that make it, the ones that succeed, are the ones that are resilient. That they're not going to this thing like it's a crap table or roulette table, right? Where they're putting their chips and hoping it lands on their thing. They're willing, just like you astutely observed, like me, I was willing to do whatever it took to make Herbal Ecstacy successful in the days. And I was relentless. You have to be like that on Amazon. And just know that when you put your product out there, it's not black and white. It's not ones and zeros. You might succeed a little bit and fail a little. You might succeed and then fail later. You might fail and succeed later. But it's a process of constantly tweaking the business, of constantly changing, of correcting your PPC like you guys do, of running ads, of doing podcasts, of doing promotions, of doing giveaways, of figuring out what that sweet spot is where you have the most profit and the lowest cost, where the balance is there. And that product might work for a year, might work for 6 months, and then it might not work all of a sudden. You might get bombarded by Chinese factories selling your product themselves. You might get bombarded by other sellers who go to these, big conferences. When they go to these big conferences, these Amazon seller conferences, and they're like, hey guys, garlic presses are the next big thing. And then everybody's fucking selling garlic presses, and you start selling them wondering, oh, why is my shit not selling? Well, it's because everybody and their fucking mom is selling this stuff. So you don't want to do that. So the people who succeed are the people who go into it with the attitude of, you know what, I'm going to do this to fail. Why do I say that? Okay. I say that because you have to have an attitude, just like Michael Jordan did, that, I'm not going to make all my baskets, but I'm going to make them where they count. And the aggregate of my successes is going to by far outweigh my failures. It's a very different attitude to thinking you're going to go out there and not fail. Because if you think that, you are sadly mistaken. I've got about 300 products now that are crushing it. But to get to that, we've had thousands of products that have failed. Literally. But you won't see my failures. I won't go up there and talk about failures all the time. Well, I do sometimes. I don't really, care. But the fact is that you have to go out there with a mindset of, here, I got 10 grand. I got 20 grand. Let me burn it. I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna be intelligent. I'm not going to intentionally try to burn it, but I'm gonna go out there, and I'm going out there with the mindset that I could fail. I could burn this money. And to do that, you have to have your financial nest egg. You got to have financial freedom to the point where you can have money that you can burn and just not give a fuck. And those are the people that succeed because they just don't care and they're not tied to it. Like, oh my God, if I lose this $10,000, my whole life is gone. And I'm, everything, I'm going to lose the car and I'm going to be cleaning floors or whatever. And, Johnny's not going to have diapers and whatever. Those are the people that fail because you go into it with an attitude of, I can't fail. I can't fail. That's exactly how you fail, how you lose.
It's such a good mindset. It brings back I coached tennis for a long time. I coached a lot of players, and that was one of my sayings all the time is like, you've got the freedom to fail. Okay. And it's like, it said that. And it was amazing. What would happen is as soon as you take that pressure off, they're allowed to fail. They end up competing and playing at a totally different level. And you're right. It is painful. I mean, we've all been there at some point. It's painful when you've got a business you're starting and that's all the money that you have. You end up making bad decisions because you're panicked. It's like you shut off your ads. It's like a rush move. Like, oh, let's shut everything off. And now you've killed your traction, but you've saved, your little bit of money that you have left. You're right. I like that. That's something I'm gonna start using more in this business as well, not just on the tennis court. It worked there, so it's got to work here. This is a fascinating conversation. You have a lot of motivational things that you've given us today. Your story is amazing. I want to make sure that everybody who's listening can continue to follow the content you're putting out, can maybe potentially work with you through your groups and your courses. I want to touch on one more thing again, though, is you mentioned, it is a trial and error business. It's tweak, test, measure, pivot. Those are the things that have, there is no do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. That might work for that product and it may totally flop for yours. You have to constantly tweak. So that's why it's so good to be a part of a group, a mentor network, a mastermind of some sort, because you can talk with people and help guide you through all the adjustments that you need to make. So you've got those things. People need to reach out to you, join your courses, everything that you're doing. So let everybody know real quick again, all the ways that they can contact you and where they can find your content.
Yeah, guys, just email me directly. You can, I give my direct email. I respond to all emails directly. It's darkzess@gmail.com, darkzess@gmail.com. If you forget, you can always email me. I respond to all emails. FBAsellercourse.com. That's the course. So if you email me, I'll use the code Celozo and I'll give you the $200 1-hour Amazon course going through all the stuff, how to launch a product, all the way to some of the cool hacks for Amazon businesses. If you guys want to check us out, our podcast is Hack and Grow Rich. You can find us on YouTube, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever podcasts are found, and YouTube. And if you're interested in my book, it's Billion, How I Became King of the Thrill Pill Cult. And probably, I think, most useful and most of value to your listeners. Guys, if you have a product and you think there's a story to tell, reach out to us. We want to hear it at podcastcola.com. That's podcastcola.com, and book a 15-minute free strategy session with me. And let's talk about how that's how telling better stories can help sell your product.
Everybody should do that for sure. I'm going to go buy the book today. I can't wait to, I just got to get more into that story. It's just,
I'm about to watch this Montel Williams thing.
I'm going to go watch the Montel Williams. I have got to check it all out, but man, thanks for spending some time with us today. It has been a blast. We'll reach out to you again at some point. I feel like you're the kind of guy I could go have a beer with and talk for like 9 hours, just telling stories. It's great. So we'll stay in touch and we'll maybe bring you back on again. But thanks so much for joining us. Thanks everyone for tuning in for this. If you like content like this, if you like to hear amazing stories like Shaahin's, make sure you're subscribing to this podcast. You can also see our live streams on Celozo's social media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. So make sure you subscribe to those as well. Turn on notifications and you'll get notified when we go live. Additionally, if you are currently selling on Amazon and advertising is a pain point for you, or you want to talk about adjusting your strategy, or it is too much work and you'd like to offload some of that, we'd like to talk to you at Celozo. You can go to celozo.com right now, schedule a demo, and we will talk Amazon. We'll talk everything that's going on in your business, and we'll also show you the power of the Celozo platform to help with your advertising. All right, everybody, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us, and thanks Shaahin.